Namaste to all of you. So, since Arunima is not there, I'll introduce myself. I happen to be a crazy character who also happens to be a doctor. And much of my career was spent at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, where one of the last things that I did, which was least expected of me, was to establish an integral health clinic, which started providing lifestyle modification courses based on yoga. And when that clinic or that facility had been around a few years old, and I realized that that was perhaps the last thing of lasting value that I could do for that institute. I thought, why go on spending time on administration and committee meetings? Why not quit? So that's how I ended up taking early retirement in the year 2005. And soon after that, I moved to Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch, where I thought I'll be able to find more time for dissemination of ancient Indian wisdom, particularly in light of the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. And I'm glad that I did that. And in fact, what I expected from this move did work out. And I don't know how much good it has done to the world, but it certainly has given me a lot of satisfaction in terms of uh, disseminating this wisdom through both writing and speaking. Communication is the basic gift that the divine has given me, and I have tried to use that when I have a lovely audience like uh, today available to me. I speak. Otherwise, I prefer writing. So, with that introduction, let me go to today's session. Now, during my stay in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, particularly, I found that there were frequent visits by young people, very sincere uh, about walking the spiritual path, but they seemed so intense and impatient, and sometimes also having such warped ideas about what spirituality is that they seemed on the verge of landing on the psychiatrist's couch. And if they went to a conventional psychiatrist, I'm sure he wouldn't have taken long to give them a label and put them on antipsychotic drugs. Uh, Now, how is it that these people who wanted to walk a path, the path less traveled but considered the much better path in life, how is it that these people had reached this type of a mental imbalance? Uh, I kept thinking about it, and I found that there were certain patterns which were emerging. They were not all alike. Some of them uh, took their devotion to a crazy level, and some of them became uh, vicious readers of spiritual literature and so on. Uh, and this somehow stayed in the background that this is something one can talk about to help such people. And then the occasion came in the year 2010 when I went to Wardha, Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences, to speak in a conference. It was winter, I think November or December 2010. And uh, my session was over pretty early in the morning. And I found that the bright sun outside, the winter sun, and the lawns were much more inviting than the lecture rooms. And I wasn't really much interested in listening to what was going on. So soon after my session, I came out, settled down on a bench in a corner, which was rather sort of not very much easily visible, on one side where not many people would be around, with some paper and pen. And then, I don't know what happened. I started writing about this topic, and many of the labels about the way these people get trapped emerged while writing. It was, you can say, sort of a writing which sometimes when you get into that flow, when you feel that you are just writing down what is coming to you from a higher source. So I wrote at incredible speed, and the article was almost over in the morning time. By lunchtime, the article was ready. And the first draft itself became almost the final draft. And then I have been publishing it at a few places here and there, including as a blog on the Speaking Tree. But then I thought that it needed another sort of a presentation on this platform, and that's how I took it up. And while doing it, I in fact added one more trap, the last one. You'll see that I've talked about 8 traps in this. The original was 7. This eighth one got added as a result of some more experience I've had during the last few years. So with this, I'll now turn to the PowerPoint. With this phenomenon I called obsessive compulsive spirituality. One thing which is common to such persons is that they look upon spirituality more or less the way one looks at mountaineering. Start searching for the easiest route, the shortest one, and the best techniques, the fastest way of getting to the peak. So they look upon it as yet another worldly achievement comparable to mountaineering. And some of the signs that they show are that they're ready to spend all their energy on this pursuit. It's a single minded uh, pursuit of spirituality. And for the sake of getting to the peak in the spiritual field, they are ready to give up all else. And since they are in a hurry, they come across various techniques and they keep trying one after the other in the search of the best one. And they may go in for advanced pranayamas prematurely without any guidance from a guru, which can be quite risky. They may meditate for long hours and forget about eating and sleeping in that process. And then they start looking for a change. How am I changing as a result of all this that I'm doing? And if they get an experience which may be called a vision or a spiritual experience, they attach great importance to it. And they're quite willing and eager to talk at length about what they are doing and what is happening to them. Now, if you compare these people with an ordinary, ambitious young man, you find that both want something, they want it badly. It's just that what they want is different. The one who is not on the path of spirituality, in a very conscious manner, all of us are on a spiritual journey. But those who are not on it consciously may want money, power, prestige, position, and so on, if they are very ambitious. Whereas this person wants to be on the peak in the spiritual sphere, and he may look at it in many ways. He look at it as something as the awakening of the Kundalini and reaching right up to the top, or looking upon it as something which is called self-realization, union with the divine, uh, having a vision which is uh, far wider and higher and deeper than that of the average person, with the result that they have access to knowledge which one ordinarily does not have at a mental level, being able to look into their past lives, being able to look into their future, and being able to heal people who are unwell by a mere touch, and so on. I don't know what they look for, but they want something spectacular. So both are wanting something badly. The ambitious person in the worldly sphere may just look for things like uh, something like power, prestige, and wealth, and maybe a good partner, good children, and so on and so forth. But this person is looking for some spectacular things which he feels are so important and will give this person a sense of achievement which is not possible in the worldly sphere. So, what is common to them is that both want something, they want it quite badly, but what they want is different. In other words, they both want something for themselves. So, they are both suffering from what may be called acute self absorption. Now, which of the two is worse? Probably obsessive compulsive spirituality is in fact worse, because the one who is ambitious, at least he can relate to the rest of the world. Everybody understands him, he understands the world, and he may not talk about what he really wants in as open a manner, in as blunt a manner as the one who has obsessive compulsive spirituality, because at least there's some sense of modesty, some sense of decency, that I should not be seen to be too ambitious, I should not be bragging about my achievements, and so on and so forth. So he sort of put on a certain, at least a thin veneer of humility and his limitations. But this person, he feels that I'm talking about something which is absolutely out of this world, very noble, and therefore there's no need to hide it. And he may talk about it very openly, and in fact, maybe eager to talk about it at the least provocation. So, in fact, that can be worse. In other words, so this person is actually trapped in spirituality, and these traps can take various forms. One of them is what may be called the transactional trap. He feels that I've sacrificed so much, I don't care for what other people care for. So, in a way, I've sacrificed all desire for wealth, power, position, prestige, getting married, and so on and so forth. I've sacrificed so much. So, at least as a compensation, I should be rewarded in the spiritual sphere. So, they're looking upon it as sort of an exchange. If I give up something, in exchange, I must get something back. And they feel that what I have opted for is in fact much better. It is gold. So they want gold, and what they've given up, they think is devalued currency. So the exchange looks very attractive, and, and that's how they're caught in this transactional trap. What would be the right approach? The right approach for such a person would be to give up everything that does not actually interest the person anymore, that does not matter to the person anymore. So that giving up does not feel like giving up. And that happens on the spiritual path slowly over time, because many of the things which an ordinary person may find very absorbing, entertaining, amusing, necessary, and so on, this person feels that they are giving at best only some flimsy and fleeting and fragile pleasures, and therefore they do not interest the person anymore. He's looking for greater permanence in both what he wants and what gives him a sense of satisfaction, a sense of mental peace, a sense of happiness, which is quite different qualitatively from the type of happiness an ordinary person is looking for. So, when that happens, then many of the ordinary things which appear important to us start falling off from life. So, then when he gives them up, it does not look like, feel like giving up. But then for giving up what does not feel like giving up, he is not expecting anything in return. Whatever happens as a result of this is a byproduct. He's not looking at it as some sort of an exchange that since I've given up something, now I must get something back. So this is what, this not wanting it because you don't find it interesting or important anymore. It ceases to matter to the person is what Sri Aurobindo calls the inner renunciation. You've given it up within. And when that happens, outer renunciation generally follows, but it is not essential because some of the things, uh, like say food, will continue to interest us and will continue to be necessary. Uh, one can't give it up and one does not have to give it up. One does not have to torture oneself by going on a prolonged fast or going on an extremely restricted diet to prove that I don't care for food anymore. What is important is that if I get food which I like, which is palatable to me today, I enjoy it. But then my happiness does not depend upon it. If tomorrow I don't get that type of food, I don't miss it. That is inner renunciation, which is much more important than outwardly giving up something and feeling that I have made a sacrifice. The second trap is what may be called the scholastic trap. This person reads a lot of spiritual literature. His speed is very fast. He understands by and large whatever he is reading. He's quite intelligent, and he has an incredible memory. He develops an incredible memory. He remembers whatever he has read, and the more he reads, the more he thinks that he has now become spiritual, whatever it means. But spirituality is not something, not a head full of spiritual truths, no matter how well one has grasped them at the mental level. Spiritual growth, true spiritual growth, actually needs putting those truths into practice or living life which is in light of those truths that one has learned. That practice is much more important than knowing lots of facts and going on learning more and more by reading more and more books or listening to more and more talks or attending several retreats and so on and so forth. Now, what practice does when one practices what one is learning, it generates an experience. And that experience shows us that although I tried to practice what I knew, I failed at a few points. I fell short of what I should have done in light of what I knew. Now, this experience, and then just a minute, I think I have to turn on the computer battery. Seems the skin. So as a result of practicing, we generate experience, and that experience tells me that I fell short of, in my practice, I fell short of what I actually knew I should be doing. And this leads to inner work, which in turn then gets reflected in subsequent practice in outer life. And this is how one grows slowly. So it is this experience that helps, not just knowing more and more. The whole process is rather slow, and we have to give it time. Just by, as Kabir has said in one of his couplets, that just by watering, giving too much water to a plant, we can't make it grow faster than it is programmed to grow. And the same applies also to the spiritual progress. We can't hasten it beyond a point. Here, I may bring in this beautiful quote from the mother: to know is good, to live is better, which means to put it into practice is better. And then to be, that is perfect. That is the terminal point, the, the goal, the final goal, which will take its time. But then, what is that goal of perfection? To be. What does to be mean? What it means is that to undergo such a change, such a transformation, that to put into practice what one knows exactly without feeling any strain, without feeling that one is doing anything special, because that is the only thing that comes naturally to the person. What the person knows is what comes naturally to the person. The person can't just do otherwise. He has become his knowledge. So that is to be, and that is perfect. Now, to move from living, which is better than just knowing, to that final point, which is perfection, that is living, practicing what one knows to be the right thing, what one knows to be good, in such a way that it becomes second nature. One doesn't make an effort, one just can't do otherwise. There's a long distance and a big gap between just trying to put into practice what one knows and reaching that point of being or becoming perfect. The third trap into which these people may sometimes fall is what may be called the signboard trap. They make uh, abruptly some superficial and visible changes in their dress. They may start wearing white or saffron or whatever. They adopt some fat diets. They may go on ritualistic fasts, sometimes fasting to the extent that it can be considered self torture. They may also undertake and many other types of self torture, like, say, sleeping on the floors, sleeping without a mattress, and so on and so forth. Then they may observe, like fasting, also periods of total silence, Maun Vrat. They won't speak for long periods of time. They may go on repeated chanting of some mantra or a holy name or whatever. They may start having a rosary in which they keep a careful count of how many times they have moved the beads and synchronize that movement of the beads with their chanting. And they may have from morning till night a punishing schedule, a schedule which they follow very religiously, rigorously, uh, so that they're busy from morning till night. Now, because of the way they look, what they eat, they stand out in a crowd, and they're extremely busy. They have little time for anything except what they think is necessary in spiritual life. That is their view of spiritual life. And they have such a busy schedule. This time I'm supposed to do this, sometimes that, and of course they take care. Some might get obsessed also with their health. So for that also can take a lot of time. But this is the time when I practice my asana. This is the time for my massage, and this is the time for my pranayamas, and this is the time for uh, so this and that, for eating this, for this is a time for uh, so the whole, they live like a machine. It's a very busy schedule, more or less a minute to minute program for their day. But for what? They're living only for themselves, expecting that somehow something spectacular, which they consider the hallmark of spirituality, that will happen to them by living like this. So this is a signboard trap. But instead of that happening, it only ends up boosting their ego, that I am somebody very special, but leads to no real progress. Spirituality is far simpler. It's not so complex. It is essentially about love. And love, which is universal in nature, not defined by boundaries such as family and so on. It is much wider than that. And it is expressed by giving what we have to those who need it. That is the hallmark of outer life. And this outer life leads to an inner change. And this inner change then gets reflected in subsequent outer life. So that's how this process continues and one makes progress. So essentially about loving more, loving better, loving more unconditionally. The quality and quantity of love and compassion keeps increasing. That is one way of looking at spirituality. So that these outer signs are acceptable. It's not that they are absolutely unacceptable. If they come naturally to the person, some of those signs may be acceptable, but they are neither necessary nor sufficient. You might have seen pictures of Swami Vivekananda. He's always in a saffron robe with a big turban and so on. One day somebody asked him, "Why do you dress up like that?" He says, "I dress up like that because in that dress nobody will ask me for money." Now, that was a humorous reply. But then, what it brings out is that he did not consider that dress itself to be the hallmark of what he was. The fourth trap may be called the school living certificate trap. This person has had a spiritual experience, maybe a vision or hearing something coming straight from the divine or whatever. So he has had a spiritual experience, he is ecstatic about it. Ecstasy is good, but bliss is better. So he imagines what type of bliss will be there at the summit. I've just got the first experience. It is the beginning. It's like getting a school living certificate. But then there is something much higher, like a PhD. So to start with, he wants to repeat the experience, he wants to improve upon the experience, and he's in a hurry to get to the peak. He behaves like a child who has just got a school living certificate and is now in a great hurry to get a PhD. So this may be called the school living certificate trap. Now, these type of spiritual experiences are a reality. They do happen, but they're just an encouragement on the path, and they have to put in the right perspective. One doesn't have to try to repeat them. One doesn't have to attach too much importance to them. They may sometimes indicate acceptance by a guru. You adopted or you turned towards a guru, and in the spiritual experience, the guru appears to you, seems to be guiding you. Now, that indicates acceptance by the guru. But whatever the type of spiritual experience it is, one has to accept it gracefully and gratefully without attaching undue importance to it, because one has to realize that the essence lies not in relishing this experience, but on keeping on walking the spiritual path. And that is our effort. And if you put in that effort, that will earn divine grace. Grace will follow. And that is what will actually take us further, because personal effort is important to earn the grace. But eventually, it is divine grace that takes us really forward. And then what is the problem in walking? Because the walk itself is blissful. So what is the hurry? One can enjoy the journey without worrying about the destination. The fifth trap may be called the misplaced curiosity trap. This person has become very curious about things which he thinks are really important for spirituality. For example, questions like what happens after death? Where does the soul live after death? Is rebirth a fact? Does it really happen? Then he may go to someone who does past life regression and tries to know something about his past life. He may go to astrologers to find out about his future. He may himself start studying past life regression or astrology or a energy healing system like Reiki or pranic healing. He may also ask questions such as, can an evil man be reborn as an animal? Uh, or once one is born as a man, one will never be reborn as an animal? Can one communicate with the dead? Can yogis live without food, water, and air? Is the date of death fixed? Can it be altered in any way? Is the fixed date of death dependent on a calendar death, or is it based on the number of breaths that you have been allotted? Can one die at will whenever one wants? Can one postpone death if one wants? Now, these are all irrelevant questions. Wrong questions with which at least to start on the spiritual journey. As one continues, one might get some answers, some tentative answers to some of these questions. But that is not what spirituality is basically about. And to pursue these questions as the primary effort on the spiritual path is at best fruitless, and it can be much worse. It, in fact, can be very dangerous. What spirituality is really about is to help us put our desires in perspective. We all have desires which is legitimate, and to accumulate the means to satisfy those desires has also been permitted. Kama and artha both are acceptable, but then they have to be within the framework of dharma, that is within the framework of right and wrong, because the ultimate goal of life is liberation, liberation from bondage, including the bondage of desires. So it helps us put desires in perspective and starts realizing more and more, not just as theoretical knowledge, but through the experience of the spiritual practice, that the fulfillment of no worldly desire will bring lasting happiness. This experience has to be repeated several times by fulfilling some desires that we have. Otherwise, it will remain theoretical. Now, if this experience that these fulfillment of these worldly desires will not give lasting happiness becomes a personal experience, then this knowledge is truly internalized. And then it puts the future desires in perspective. They will not be so intense. If some of them are not fulfilled, we will not be worried. And we will know in advance that, like the previous desire, if this one is also fulfilled, it will not give me lasting happiness. And therefore, that will tone down the intensity and it will make sure that I will not resort to any unfair means to satisfy that desire. So that is one thing which spirituality does. Another thing that it does is it helps us deal with the rat race, that unhealthy competition. It justifies universal love instead of the love which is based on considerations such as relationship through blood or marriage, or belonging to the same clan, caste, religion, nation, and so on and so forth. We realize that there's a deeper reality, a deeper oneness, a deeper sense of unity, which is far deeper than these superficial connections. And that is at the level of the soul. At the level of the soul, we are all one. And therefore, that sense of oneness justifies universal love, not love which is based on these very objective parameters. It improves relationships because the person's behavior changes, makes life happier, healthier, and more meaningful. That is what spirituality is about, not about knowing the past life and knowing about the future and so on and so forth. So spirituality basically is an inner change, and the change is based on our picture of reality. Now our picture of reality goes beyond what is part of our sensory experience. That is part of the reality still, but then we are aware of a deeper, higher, and wider reality which extends beyond it, which is inaccessible to ordinary sensory experience. And that, in fact, reality we find is imperishable and constant, in contrast with the reality based on sensory experience, which is fleeting and not permanent. Of course, that doesn't mean it's not real. It is real while it lasts. The pots are also real, although their deeper reality may be the clay. But while the pots are there, pots are real. So I'm not saying that that is Maya, aankhon ka dhokha and all that. So it's an illusion. So forget about it. It's not real. But now the ordinary picture of reality has expanded to include also another layer of reality which is not normally accessible to us, and this wider, deeper, and higher picture of reality, which includes the reality, ordinary reality based on sensory experience, leads to a new point of view. Because when your picture of reality changes, you look at life, events, and the creation around you differently. So instead of seeing multiplicity as the lasting fact, you start seeing the unity of the creation as a more lasting and deeper reality. And that leads to a sense of oneness. This oneness leads to love. Love is expressed by giving. That in turn leads to an inner change, which is expressed in outer life. Now, this is a long, self perpetuating process. It is slow, it is long, it is difficult, but it is enjoyable. That's what makes spiritual life a happy life. And with happiness comes also good health. So one becomes happier and healthier. That is what spirituality is about. And instead of bothering too much about what happens after death and what we did in our previous life, what really matters, whether there is an afterlife, whether we either rebirth and so on, uh, whether these are true or not, irrespective of that, what really matters is how good use we make of this life. This life on this planet, how well we use it for the purpose for which this life has been given to us. And the purpose for which we have been given this life is to take our consciousness a few steps further. That is the purpose. The goal may be ultimately the union with the divine, but most of us will not reach that goal in this lifetime, but that doesn't matter. The goal is a specific point, the purpose is direction oriented. To take a few steps in the right direction itself gives us a lot in terms of what we are all looking for at wrong places. What are we all looking for? We are looking for health, happiness, a sense of fulfillment. And all these things we start experiencing much before we reach the final goal. And that is what makes the spiritual path an enjoyable journey. The journey can be enjoyed without bothering about the destination, because getting obsessed with the destination will not bring it any closer. It will, in fact, outdistance us. The next trap is what may be called the grandiosity trap. The person, this is what's called the intermediate zone. This is a rather dangerous zone. I don't understand it fully. I don't have experience and I have not intimate experience of anyone who has gone through it, but Sri Aurobindo has talked about it. So I'm bringing it here. This intermediate zone is one in which the seeker thinks that he has realized much more than he actually has. His realization in terms of the deeper truths of existence is not as much as he thinks. He magnifies his realization. And the result is that he has no firm foothold. He neither has a firm foothold in the physical sphere, that is, which is more palpable in terms of ordinary reality to which with which we can relate in ordinary experience, nor in the spiritual realm, which is occult in nature. He has no foothold in either of these. And that's what makes him vulnerable to hostile forces. Because there are forces in the occult worlds which are not interested in our making spiritual progress. They do not want this planet to be a better place to live in. So those forces which are opposed to it, we become more vulnerable to them in the intermediate zone. It is not an inevitable stage on the spiritual path, and it is more likely if the person is impatient and anxious, if the person puts the mental and emotional in front. Mental, which means that he looks upon spirituality as mental excursions, arguments, reading a lot, and so on. Or he puts the emotional in front, that is, with his devotion, he goes into a frenzy and then feels that since I have become such a true devotee, I've surrendered everything to the divine, I am at his disposal, so I need not do anything. And then he starts expecting, without doing anything on my part, just because I have such intense devotion towards the guru or to the divine, very nice things will happen to me. He starts expecting those, and that is when he may be trapped in the intermediate zone. He has excessive confidence in his own abilities. That is, I can do it, I can go very fast on the spiritual path. Or he has excessive confidence in getting special help from the divine, that I'm so unique, I'm so special, I'm such a specially chosen person that I will receive special help which is denied to others, and that's how I'll progress fast. So these are some of the things which make the person getting trapped in the intermediate zone much more likely. What is the prevention? Sincerity on the path, humility, most important, being calm and patient. Don't be in a hurry. Just keep walking the path. Progress will take care of itself. letting the psychic lead, not the mental and the emotional. Psychic is our own divine essence. And the soul, also has a dynamic aspect, and that is what the psychic or the psychic being is about. So let the divine essence take charge, lead us rather than being led by the mental and the emotional parts of the being. And of course, to prevent going into the intermediate zone, or if one is heading towards it, to come out of it, the Guru's guidance is very important. Sri Aurobindo asserts that safety lies, that is not landing in this dangerous intermediate zone. Safety lies in attending to psychic and spiritual development before entry into the occult regions. So occult regions, like trying to uh, enter those other worlds where are trying to communicate with the dead and things of that. But that is trying to enter the occult regions. So before one makes any such effort, first take care of psychic and spiritual development. And in fact, psychic and spiritual development, psychic, you see, is through our own efforts, you say, more or less, by taking more and more guidance from our own divine essence, the psychic being. And spiritual development is more of, you can say, uh, divine grace, which keeps transforming us. So, effort plus grace, let these things go together and lead to the progress before bothering about such obscure matters. The seventh trap is what one may call the greatness trap. The person realizes that I have not reached the peak on the spiritual field, but at least I am a much better person than most people around me. I am one notch above the rest of the humanity, at least one notch above the typical human being. Now, this is a very subtle trap. And people around the person may, in fact, strengthen it, because when they find that this person is uh, on the spiritual path, he has given up some of the ordinary comforts, and he knows quite a bit about spiritual matters. He's able to discuss them meaningfully. He's able to help us when we are in a stressful situation, and so on. They start feeling that he's truly special. They start admiring him, and they may start almost worshipping him. Now, that boosts the person's ego, and he gets more and more convinced that I am truly am special. I'm much better than the most. I may not be self-realized yet, but at least I'm better than most of the other people, which may be true. But then he doesn't realize that what he has to still walk on the path, the distance that he has to cover is much more than the distance that he has already covered. That is true for most of us. So that humility disappears in the process of this great falling into this greatness trap, into which the others may in fact encourage us to enter. So one has to be cautious, not to be taken by how they look at us. We have to look at ourselves honestly, with a true sort of vision, realizing that we are yet far, far away from where we really need to go. And this is a trap to which even experienced seekers are vulnerable, although they may put on a thin veneer of humility, and even they are praised and admired, they may keep saying that, no, 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 I'm far away from it, and so on. But at some point, place, at somewhere deep within, they also feel that, yes, truly, I deserve at least part of this admiration, if not all of it. And they also start enjoying this admiration and the way they are looked upon. But experienced seekers can handle it with a little more balance and moderation. A novice, in fact, may flaunt what he has achieved and expect that, yes, people will now treat me specially because I am special. I am much better than most of them. And the other ordinary humanity may be treated with pity or disdain or a combination of both. Pity, oh, I pity these people. Why can't they see that there is such a beautiful path available? Why don't more people travel it more often? It's so blissful, it's so enjoyable, it's so rewarding, it's so easy, and yet they don't. The one thing which can give them liberation from all the problems of life, all the sorrow and suffering that they're going through, that one thing they can't see, I pity them. Or disdain, that I understand why they. are not able to take to the spiritual path like me because they are not like me. They are inferior people. They are a second grade. So no, what they don't realize is that probably I was also there a few lives back, and these people maybe where I am today or even ahead of me in one of the subsequent lives, or maybe even in this life. There could be a spectacular change at some point in their life, and they may overtake me. Now, this greatness trap can become much worse if the person simultaneously is also in the scholastic trap. So he's not only has this idea that because of my spiritual experiences or spiritual practice or progress, I'm better than most. I'm also a learned man. I know, understand spiritual truths. I can explain them to others and so on and so forth. So that makes this greatness trap even worse. So the cautions required so that one doesn't fall into this trap is that it is good to remember that the distance covered on the path is much less than what still remains to be covered. That applies to most of us. And even if the person has walked a considerable distance, a steep fall is never far away because this progress is not something which is steady and always goes forwards. One can also fall, and there are enough temptations around which may lead to a steep fall. That's why Sri Aurobindo never liked the term advanced sadhak and so on. And once he told when somebody was called an advanced sadhak, he said, well, he's a sadhak, but don't call anyone advanced. Uh, just you wait, and you never know when he might stumble and have a fall. This eighth one I added only during the last few days when I reflected over my experience that this can be another type of trap, the spiritual activism trap. And it can be even more subtle than the previous one, that is the greatness trap. This is a young person who finds there's a lot that is wrong with the world. Perfectly right. We all know that there's a lot wrong with the world. It's a highly imperfect world. And he feels that the solution to this lies in spirituality. 100% correct. The problems of the world will not be solved through changes in the political system or through changes in the system of education or through uh, religion or revolution. All these things, or through social work, all these things have happened in the past, and yet the world continues to be a place of sorrow, misery, and suffering. So the ultimate solution lies in spirituality. And what this means is we will not get into because Sri Aurobindo and the mother have gone to the very roots of this from the spiritual angle. Maybe a few minutes later it might come up again. But the young person is right. There's a lot that is wrong with the world. The solution, the final solution, the ultimate solution lies in spirituality. Perfectly correct. And then he says, that is why I'll adopt spirituality and I'll use spirituality to change the world. And well, even that is acceptable. One can have ambitions which are a little unrealistic. That is one of the characteristics of youth. We don't ridicule it anymore because we also know that all the major changes in the world, and I think the Martin Luther King was the one who said that. If you realize all the major social changes in the world for the better have all been initiated by young people. So that's also a fact. And another person who has said something beautiful, Joseph Clinton Pierce, that there are three qualities of youth which they were ridiculed in the past, but today we admire them for the very same qualities. And what are those three qualities? One is energetic idealism, and that can express through spirituality. Energetic idealism. The second is great expectations, like changing the world. And the third is hidden greatness. There is a lot of potential that is hidden, which is waiting to be tapped, which is waiting to unfold. So all these things are true. Then, they also realize that I can't address everything that is wrong with the world. I can pick up a pet cause, whatever that cause may be: poverty, corruption, gender inequality, child labor, child abuse, elderly abuse, environmental issues, what have you. I mean, one can have an endless list of causes, and one sort of there can't be any fixed rule which one can say because of which one particular activist chooses one particular cause that becomes his pet cause. That's also fine. But where the spiritual activist goes wrong is that he not only sets a very unrealistic goal, very often his knowledge is very inadequate for going towards that goal, and the resources are very meager. He doesn't realize that all these things are important. For example, I've seen young people setting up as a goal, I want to change the system of education in the country for the better. An unrealistic goal. How much do you yourself know about education to change the system in the country? They hardly know anything. They're just some sort of a graduation somewhere in some, and they feel that now that they have gone to school and college, they themselves have the experience of their schooling and college, and now they know how to change the system for the better. They're not satisfied with the way they had their schooling, but what type of change it should be? Maybe at the most they read a little here and there about what Sri Aurobindo said about education, or what Rabindranath Tagore said, and what J. Krishnamurti said. So they feel now I have the knowledge also. But the knowledge is highly inadequate. Then they're looking at changing the system in the whole country, and they hardly have any resources. They want to do it single handed. Now, which means that they slide down to the mental level, because you can't stay at the high level of the soul, at this level of the soul all the time. We are not there. We can't organize our life entirely around our soul. So it's natural to slide down to the mental level. And that is the level at which an ordinary activist who is working from the mental level works. So they come down to the level of the ordinary activist, but without the abilities of that ordinary or rational activist. There's no hard and fast dividing line between the two. But for convenience, I've divided these two types of activists in two different categories. And what the spiritual activist should be like, and what the rational activist generally is. A spiritual activist should consider himself an instrument of the divine, and he's not the doer of what he's doing. He should not be attached to the outcome. He may expect an outcome, but he should not be attached to it. The outcome may be quite different from what he expected. He's working for the divine, not for man. Doesn't mean that he should not do any social work. What it means is that he's working for God in man. As the Bible says, service to man is service to God, because there is God in man. So he's working for the divine in man, and this work he's doing because this is an opportunity for him to fulfill the purpose of his own life. He's not changing the world. So in a way, it is also a self-centered pursuit, but it's good to honestly acknowledge that. It's good work. It's working for the divine as an instrument. So that is what a spiritual activist should be like. But very often, he adopts some of the characteristics of the rational activist who has righteous anger. He's angry about the way the world is, and he wants to change it, but he's not much into spirituality. So he has the confidence that yes, I can do it, and he has worldly wisdom, which this person may not have, the spiritual activist. The two are not incompatible. The person, in fact, not only can have worldly wisdom along with being on the spiritual path, in fact, he should have it if he really wants to do something meaningful. And because of this, he cannot raise funds, he cannot lead a team. Now, the rational activist has a tendency to measure the outcome, and that is what sometimes frustrates him. This person, if he's truly not attached to the outcome, even if he measures it, at least he will not be frustrated. And then to get more funds, to expand the work, the person, after measuring the outcome, knows how to magnify it, exaggerate it, show it as much more than what he has actually achieved. Now, these are some of the things that happen. And therefore, the question arises, can these two approaches, the best of the two approaches, be combined? Yes, with resounding success. And there are examples of that. So the person who is a young person who is trapped in this spiritual activism trap, ordinary things he doesn't want to do, and extraordinary things he fails to do. That is his trap. And in that process, sometimes he also gets so divided in his mind, so fragmented, that he also may land on the psychiatrist's couch. That's what, and that's one of the newer things that I've seen in the last few years. So, conclusion. Deliberately put this slide which announces the conclusion, because it said that when you speak, people lose track of what you're saying, they lose attention because attention span is only about 20 minutes. But all of them wake up at once you say conclusion. Now that you have all of them listening to you. So some of the things which are relevant to this topic I have put here. Spiritual experiences are not topics for conversation, not drawing room banter. Spirituality is not an achievement to flaunt. Spirituality is not about performing miracles. Ordinary life itself is miraculous enough. Spirituality is organizing life around a higher reality or the deepest self. Or to put it briefly, what the mother has said is don't speak, act, don't announce, realize. The outcome of spirituality is work becoming more enjoyable. Whatever the work the person does, if he does it with the spiritual attitude, he enjoys the work more, his relationships improve, he has a better ability to withstand the ups and downs of life. Others can't see most of these things, but there are certain outcomes which are faintly visible also to others. We find that now the quality of his work has improved. He has become more loving, caring, he is willing to share more. He loves better, wider, more people. He has become more kind, compassionate, and generous. Now, these are some of the things which the people outside may also see. Spirituality is not about becoming dead serious. Humor is a part, can be a part of spirituality. Spirituality is about finding happiness in making somebody else happy. So being happy is not a sin, but then the best type of happiness comes when you are making somebody else happy. Spirituality enables a person to overcome dependence on people and things for happiness. In short, independent of external circumstances. The happiness becomes independent of external circumstances. So, happiness remains, but the means and ends are different. The means are not trying to get more and more of those things, mold the behavior and control the behavior of others, and so on to be happy. And the end is not getting more and more or controlling others. The ends are different. And the quality of happiness changes. It is not really happiness because happiness is coupled with sorrow. It's a part of the dualities of life. What the person experiences is something more steady, which is mental peace and equanimity rather than the happiness or the thrills of happiness, which we call, which we ordinarily look for. They are coupled with sorrow. And it's because of these differences that one half of the world can't understand the happiness of the other, because the sources of happiness are different. The type of happiness achieved is different. And therefore, those who are on the spiritual path, their happiness, people around them, including their well wishers, sometimes can't understand. Can end with this advice from the mother, one of the simplest pieces of advice she has given: be simple. Don't make life unnecessarily complicated. And life can be simple if we don't complicate it with unnecessary arguments. Be happy. Now, this can't be an order, you can say. How can you order somebody to be happy? If he's unhappy, he's unhappy. But if you are on the spiritual path, you can be happy no matter what. Because if the external circumstances don't affect you, you treat all external circumstances to be an opportunity for spiritual growth, then you truly can be happy. Or at least at the simplest level, if you take all external circumstances to be an expression of the divine will to you have surrendered, you can be happy. Then remain quiet. No unnecessary agitation. Do your work as well as you can. Not as well as possible. You may not be able to do it in the best possible way, but at least as well as you can. Keep yourself always open to me. Now, what does this mean? We are the divine grace is always available to us. The divine guidance is always available to us. But sometimes we create obstructions at the mental level by overthinking, by raising unnecessary questions, going into futile arguments. If we don't do that, just let ourselves be unobstructed channels for the divine influence and guidance. It works because it's always available. So keep yourself always open to me. This is all that is asked from you. Gratitude to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo for making the session possible. And love you all and thank you all for being there.
Thank you so much, sir, for this enlightening session, and for sharing your valuable insights on a very interesting subject today. Participants, if you have any questions or reflections to share, please go ahead. You can raise the hand, unmute yourself, and speak up. We have a few words of appreciation for you, sir. Thank you, Bijlani, sir, for the wonderful talk on spirituality and love. And thank you, Dr. Bijlani ji, for this excellent, very practical clarity of supremely important wisdom.
So, if there are no other questions, maybe I can ask a little one.
Yes, please, yeah.
Dr. Bijlani, this is Vivek Sharma.
Vivek Sharma.
Yes. Sir, wonderful lesson as usual. My I had little queries along the way, but I think you addressed all of them as you went along very nicely. So it was wonderful that way. I have a little question regarding the last part about, you referenced about futile argument versus, so that becomes a great dividing line in the sense that there is obviously certain degree of judgment involved in at what point it transitions from being a central a question that's important or could impact things versus being futile. So that I know there's a judgment element there, but I think that aspect of futility sometimes comes into play in the sense of just जिसको भक्ति भाव कहता है. भक्ति भाव में तो obviously argument goes away completely, but there are certain dangers to that as well. Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, the fact is we are all constituted differently, and for some of us, the intellectual approach to spirituality matters, and that is in fact the type of people we have in these talks and so on. And Sri Aurobindo is sort of an excellent resource for those people because in the looking at spirituality from the intellectual point of view, again, I mean, he has hardly any parallel. I mean, if you read the Life Divine, you come to know not only his spiritual experiences and rationalization of those experiences, you end up learning also a lot about how to think clearly, logically, and what actually the faculty of reasoning is about and how it can be best used. All these things you end up learning from that. So I'm not saying that the intellectual approach is invalid. It will come naturally to some of us, and whatever comes naturally is the best path to at least start with. But at what point do those arguments become futile? There can be no absolute answer to it. One of the things which we have to keep in mind is, will the answer really matter? Will it matter in terms of what I have to do? Is there a balance in my life between what I already know and what I'm doing? Now, these are some of the questions which will help us keep some arguments aside and instead get busy with what we should be doing, generate experience from there, and that is how we start working on our and within rather than just raising arguments and questions. Because the ultimate answers cannot come to us at the mental level. Because how can we have all the answers available to us the mental level about something which itself is beyond the level of the mental? Mental is one of the tools that has been created by that which is much above the mental. It's a tool for a limited use and purpose. And in human beings, it has been developed to such an extent that human beings have been able to land on the moon. And now we have artificial intelligence. So all these human beings have been able to do as a result of the tool that we have been given. But all the same, it is a tool. And that tool is not as good as the one who made that tool, who created that tool, or the one who's manifesting through that tool, who is channelizing his consciousness through that tool. It cannot be as good as that. So therefore, we will not get the ultimate answers. Uh, if we need those ultimate answers, they'll come through experience, which the rishis and the mystics have had. They have been able to make that leap in consciousness which goes beyond the mental, and that is where they got the truths about which we keep raising questions.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Wonderfully said. I guess so. Some elements of Loke Asmin Duvida Nishta, and then some element of pursuing the abstract is a difficult and long path. So understood. Thank you so much.
Shikhar Agarwal has raised the hand. Please go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Bijlani. Thank you so much for such a wonderful talk. I'm actually one of your students from the 2001 batch in AIIMS Physiology. So it was just wonderful to see you again. I have two questions. The first question is that I surmised from your talk that there is the idea of obsessive compulsive spirituality affects more the young population as compared to the older population. Have you ever seen the paradoxical way where it may affect the older population once they may have more free time and they probably are retired or things of that nature? And my second question is, do you think one can achieve spirituality through work? I have always believed that my karma is my dharma. And do you think, especially in the field of medicine, do you think it is perhaps possible, because spirituality essentially entails living for the others? So there are many opportunities where one could live for the others, especially in medicine. Would love to get your thoughts on that.
These are both very good questions. For the first question, generally I have seen that it affects the young far more than the older people, because uh, when we have seen life, we sometimes grow mature enough not to fall into the type of traps that I was talking about. So one may, it's a common tendency to move more and more towards spirituality. And one way to tell you how you find that the shift takes place. Once, in a group of senior citizens, I gave them a questionnaire. One of the questions was, who was your most dependable support in life at age 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 now? Something like that. Now, most of them said at age 10, most dependable support, parents. At 20, girlfriend or boyfriend. At 30, my partner. At 40, my children. The pattern was pretty clear. And after 50, God. Now, so you find that they are moving in the spiritual direction. But then after going through all this experience, they don't fall into one of these traps. They may not be as intense, but at the same time, they are not. They don't fall into these traps either, by and large. The second question, work. Yes, in fact, Sri Aurobindo and the mother have emphasized that a lot. That work is the simplest and safest sadhana. But although work can be worship, we can approach the divine through work. All work automatically does not become worship. It depends upon the primary motive behind the work. If the primary motive is love for others and the living that we make out of it incidental, then it becomes worship. So that attitude is important.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for that.
Participants, anyone else wants to ask something or share something?
Once again, as we did last time, those of you who are not on the mailing list of the Yes platform, you can write down your email addresses in the chat, and then we'll be happy to add you so that you keep getting information about this type of talks automatically through the emails that we send out twice a week.
Okay, so the recording of today's session will be published on our YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality, and you can visit the channel and explore vast content on yoga, education, spirituality, and related subjects. And you can also connect with us on Instagram and Facebook. So someone has raised the hand. Santoshji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Santosh.
I'm Santosh Khanna. Yeah, nice to be here for the session, and very interesting, quite relevant topic because what I when I had met sir also we had interesting discussion on the importance of humor in life, and I was very happy to hear that you were mentioning it in the presentation as humor is one of the most important things in all pursuits of life. I just posted a comment in the chat box also. Like what happens usually is just an add-on to what you have done, sir. Not a question. So what I feel is that the problem usually lies in separating the pursuit from life as a separate activity. That is where the whole problem lies. I hope, yeah, that is the core message. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I think that you made an important point because, in spite of all the efforts that Sri Aurobindo, the mother, Swami Vivekananda, and all such great people made in the recent past, that spirituality should enter every part of life, it should permeate our daily life. In spite of that, the normal tendency is to divide life between that part of life which is spiritual and that part which is worldly. That compartmentalization continues so deep rooted that we feel that if we are very busy in worldly life, we have no time for spirituality. We forget that while being busy in worldly life, we can bring spirituality in worldly life itself.
So when you mentioned the renunciation, leaving the world, there was an interesting anecdote about Swami Vivekananda. A young boy approached him saying that I want to renounce everything. The Swamiji asked him, "What do you have after all to renounce? First, have something and come." So, thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, thank you once again, Dr. Bijlani, sir, for sparing your valuable time for all of us and participants. We thank you as well for joining today. Let's close the session now with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.